Welcome to another episode of Comedy Wham Presents with me, your host, Valerie, and sometime co-host, Miss Purrington. ComedyWham.com is your place to go for features about all Austin comedy. We bring you articles and podcasts featuring the best in Austin comedy in all its shapes and formats. The podcast project began in 2016 and brings you funny people and their stories. As a fan, I like to delve into a comic's background and motivations and will usually take a detour along the way. Consider the interview a way for you to get to know the folks that make the Austin comedy scene one of the best in the country. Today I sit down with somebody who hosts one of the best comedy showcases in town, not just because it brings together a great collection of comics every week, but also because it's at a brewery. He's not only a stand-up comic of his own right, but has a strong background as an improv performer. So much so that you could take classes taught by him at the New Movement Theater. And finally, our guest has done the circuit as an FPIA contestant, has performed at several comedy festivals, and has appeared on film. As someone who I don't get to see perform very often, I'm definitely looking forward to learning more about today's comic. And now, Comedy Wham presents our guest, Nathan Ehrmann. Hello.
Hello.
Welcome.
That was, I'm so warmed by that introduction. Just, it's flattering. What a good way to start any podcast, any interview. It's just a very flattering piece of copy. I love it.
Flattery gets you a lot of places, and then that way I can go in for the kill after I just,
then you can start with a hard-hitting question like, who do you think you are?
Right. That is my icebreaker question every single time. Who the hell do you think you are?
Exactly. And then from there it's just tears. It's nothing but complete exposure. Yeah.
Right. Usually of me as a failed interviewer.
Right. You're like, I went in hard. This is going downhill for the next 45 minutes, and I don't know what to do. And then it's just a lot of breathing.
Yeah.
A lot of breathing, collecting yourself, sniffling, and then maybe like, do you have anything to plug?
Yeah.
After like 42 minutes, and then I love that. One of my favorite. I don't know. Now I'm going off the rails. One of my favorite vines ever is Macho Man Randy Savage about to cut a promo. But then it's just a super cut of him inhaling, getting ready to say stuff.
Yeah.
And it's still a solid 30 seconds, but it's just like, and I'm just like, that's really how human interaction should go.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Absolutely. Well, let me draw us back to my actual official icebreaker question, which is one word to describe your past.
This is probably not a good promotional word, but dull.
Really?
I feel like I've had a pretty, I don't know. I've definitely written and rewritten my like comedy copy, like who is Nathan Ehrmann as a performer, like over and over. It's never as good as what you've written. So thank you, Valerie. I appreciate that.
I can give you that to drop into your bio because you've got a really nice website set up. And,
thank you. Yeah, I've tried a couple of things. One time I put that my comedy has been described as a milk-soaked waffle. I don't know. I had a normal upbringing. I mean, I think obviously we all have pathos that we can go deep into. We feel like it, but I wouldn't describe what I do as like electric, or I'm sure you've gotten that one before, or like I don't know, suspenseful. It's like I grew up normal kid, single mother, brother, high school. Insecure, blah, blah. It's like, if I gave you the full life story, I'm sure that, a computer would kind of boil that down into like a word cloud that just had dull somewhere in the middle of it. So,
where did you grow up?
I grew up in Goose Creek, South Carolina, near Charleston.
Wow.
And then I went to high school in Dallas, in the DFW area.
Oh, where?
Coppell, Texas.
Okay. I was raised in Burleson.
Burleson, yeah. I'm familiar with the town of Burleson.
It's the restaurant mecca of I-35 West.
Right. Yeah, okay. Burleson, yeah. And then I came down to Austin for college, and then went back up to Dallas. My first job out of college, I was a high school teacher. High school math.
Oh, we're going to get along so well.
Oh, yeah?
Math major.
Okay, yeah, I was a math major also. And then Yeah, and then I moved to Japan for a couple of years and taught English there, and then I came back and because my contract was expiring with the Japanese government, and I was like, I can go anywhere. And I just chose Austin for some reason. Huh. I didn't have any particular goals or plans, but now that I look back on it, I should probably tell people that this was my plan, that I was going to get in that sweet Austin comedy scene, but no, that wasn't it at all. I was just like, let's go somewhere.
Yeah. When you were growing up, let's go back to that part of the timeline. Do you have any specific memories of comedy influences, watching, listening?
Yes.
Oh, you're lighting up.
Oh, for sure. So my mom, in our house in South Carolina, we had one of those old console stereos. It was like 2 tape decks on the bottom, record player on top. Mm-hmm. I can't even remember this because I use the tape decks, but I wonder if maybe it was like just good enough. This is like in the early 90s, mm-hmm. if it had like a CD player in there too, because that's how like you're keeping up with the Joneses.
Exactly.
But so one day out of nowhere, I realized that we had these giant can headphones with like a 1/4-inch plug, and there was a basket of cassettes sitting on top of that. And this was like my introduction to music, which through some very strange, like eclectic taste from my mother, and I guess my father, who wasn't around for me growing up, but because I remember very specifically that there was like the Eagles and the Indigo Girls, and then out of nowhere it was like Ice Cube's The Predator was in there as well. And I was listening to all these cassettes, and one of them that was in there was Dennis Leary's No Cure for Cancer. Which opens, it's not a straight stand-up album because it does have an opening song. His I'm an Asshole song is the opener for that. And so I was like, first of all, there's this hilarious song with a bad word in it. I get to listen to that a lot. And then it was, 50 minutes of him doing comedy, and I thought it was the funniest thing ever, the coolest thing ever. And so I was glued to this stereo like every day for 2 weeks, just listening to No Cure for Cancer over and over again. And that's like my earliest memory of stand-up, where I was like, it blew my mind. I was like, this guy just gets up there. It's just him. Mm-hmm. And he's in front of all these people, and he's just saying stuff, and they're laughing, and it's funny. And so I don't want to say I was hooked, but like, that was just like, that still stands out as a very clear memory for mm-hmm. me. And then growing up, I remember I used to, and then going into the era of burning CDs. So this is years later, and I remember I used to play stand-up comedy albums when I was falling asleep, and the ones that I had like on repeat were technically not a stand-up comedy album, but probably one of the most important things that I've watched and listened to in my whole life was John Leguizamo's Freak. It was a one-man show he did for HBO. And so there's that one. There was Dave Chappelle, Killing Him Softly. There was... I'm trying to remember which other ones were there. Mitch Hedberg. It was...
it's pretty heavy hitters.
Yeah. I wasn't boutique in my comedy taste just yet. But yeah, though I've definitely grown up like always idolizing people who were funny, people who were creative. Mm-hmm. Me and Vanessa Gonzalez talk about Freak all the time because she also grew up and watched that and was like, "That's what lit me up too." So we just every now and then we have a conversation about that, just because I think that to me is I'm still working on it. We're all still working on it all the time. But that's eventually the type of performer that I want to be. Somebody who can get up on stage and talk very openly about themselves and their life, and then also just like move around, be active, and it can become more of a show as opposed to just like standing there. Which I still utter respect for the people who stand there, because that's even harder to make entertaining. So
yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
that is true. So we've gone through, you've laid out your timeline of how you got to Austin, and you kind of teased that coming back to Austin, you didn't have the grand plan of getting into comedy. Before that point in time, coming back to Austin, did you ever entertain the idea of being a performer? And were you a performer in school?
I did want to be a performer. Until I came to Austin, until I finally like walked into the new movement and said, I'm going to do comedy, whatever that means, you know, because I think people, we like part of self-sabotage is, setting up that high bar for what you need to do to even start doing something. And in that way, you're always like, well, I'm never going to be good enough to do a thing. But then finally you have moments of clarity where you're like, I'm just going to go do it and give myself permission to not be good at it for a while. And then maybe I become good, maybe I don't, but at the very least, like something's happening.
Yeah.
So I definitely set some weird, probably high bars for myself. And, I was a rambunctious kid growing up. And then like I hit that point of adolescence where I didn't want anyone to look at me ever. And that just extended like into my mid-20s. But because I did a talent show when I was like 9 or 10 years old. I did a talent show for a summer camp I was in where I attempted to do stand-up comedy.
Oh, okay.
It was hack. I'll give it.
Well,
I wouldn't give myself. I wouldn't give myself a good score on that show. I did a talent. Yeah, it was a talent show, and the thing that blew my mind, because we did no tech rehearsal for this show or anything. It was just like, hey, kids, do you have an act? Cool. Some kids were like doing dance and some kids were like playing instruments, and I said that I wanted to tell jokes, and they were like, cool, just don't say anything terrible. And I had written some "you might be a redneck" jokes. They were contrived, obviously in form, but I did write them myself in terms of like what the actual pieces were. Yeah, I did some of those. All I could think about when I did that show, since there was not a tech rehearsal though, was how weird my own voice sounded.
Oh, interesting.
And I guess that was part of the adolescent, being super self-conscious. Yeah. Like, I was just like, I don't sound like this. And then it was like, yeah, that's how you sound, Nathan. So I was up there for like 5 minutes again. And my mom was proud of me. So,
oh yeah,
of course, but after that, nothing. I attempted a few little theater things, in various parts of my life to little success. And then when I was in high school, I was in our broadcast class. So we had like a little closed circuit TV station that we would play a show on once a week. And when I saw this show, I was like, this is our SNL. I was like, this is every Wednesday we played a show. So we spent all week making the show. And when I saw it my freshman year, I was like, I have to be on this. And then they have a bunch of prerequisites. So it took me 2 years. I was on the show. I remember doing letting the first show play and then being in the hallway and someone being like, "Hey Nathan, that sucked." And I was like,
man.
And I was like, "This is show business." Yes. Because people are that way about SNL too. Like like imagine being someone now who, or maybe not now, because I think maybe SNL's going through a good upswing because they're bringing in, I think, some more diverse voices, and they're drifting away from the, from being a little bit more formulaic. But after it was early or mid 2000s, after Will Ferrell and a lot of people sort of sifted out, they had a bit of an in between time. And imagine being someone from Chicago or LA or wherever that gets picked up and is on SNL and being in a coffee shop and someone being like, "Hey, are you so-and-so? Yeah, your show sucks."
Yeah.
Because that's going to happen for sure. No matter how, even if what you do is good, someone's going to hate, someone's going to hate it.
And layer on top of that, the whole angst of being a teenager in high school.
Right.
It's just.
Yeah. But I did that for 2 years, and that was my self-expression. I tried to do a lot of funny stuff, and I knew I wanted to tell jokes, and I had a few moments where I tried to be a bit more of a joke, funny guy, but it was always under that very heavy weight of being self-conscious and not wanting to just give myself permission to just go out there and be like, yeah, I'm not going to be good at this for maybe a year, maybe 2 years, but it was a lot of not reaching escape velocity, and then I went to college and nothing really happened there. And I do remember, when I was in college, I remember having conversations with people where I was like, I should just go do an open mic. And, my friends would be like, hey, yeah, whatever, go do it. But I just didn't, right? And this was from 2004 to 2008 in Austin, where, I mean, I don't know specifically, but I presume it was a smaller comedy scene. It probably would have been like the Velveeta Room or Cap City. And then I remember when I was in Dallas, and I was a high school teacher in Dallas, and all I did was work. You know, being a teacher is rough. So all I did was work, and I was like, you know what? I should just go to an open mic. And I definitely, like, looking back on this experience, this is why I would tell anyone in Austin, like, you know, you're lucky to be here, or you're smart to be here, to have chosen this place, because you can go and get up on stage for free without having to bring people to the show, without jumping through any of these, you know, these nonsensical hoops, and you can go and do that. And because I remember the only place that I could, there was only one comedy club I could find that had an open mic, and it would have been midnight, and I would have had to have brought 8 people.
Oh my gosh!
To get, you know, whatever, 3 or 4 minutes.
Wow.
And that being said, you know, and there was part of me, because I didn't have 8 friends at that point in my life. I was, unless I wanted to bring high schoolers.
Yeah.
So, I was like, I honestly at that point had considered putting out a Craigslist ad of being like, I need 8 people to come so I can go do comedy. It didn't happen. So it didn't happen then. And then I went to Japan, and I was in Japan for 2 years teaching English. And I lived in like a podunk town out in the middle of nowhere where there were maybe like 80 non-Japanese people, like 80 English-speaking people in the entire area. And there was this one bar that we all went to. It was like the local kind of foreigner bar. And the bartenders there spoke English, and everyone that was like your cheers. I was ready to go and see everybody.
Everybody knows your name?
Exactly. Everyone knew my name. That's probably an indication of some unhealthy drinking. But when I'd been there for a while, and someone just out of nowhere, someone just mentioned, we should do bar trivia. Like, we don't do enough here at the bar. There should be like bar trivia. There should be this stuff. And I was like, okay, I'll host a trivia night. And so I became the weekly bar trivia host at this Japanese bar. And that was, I think, kind of that was where something like clicked in my head, that I was like, I should be doing this. I should try this out. Like, because that was, when you're hosting a show, it's like, or you're hosting a trivia, it's basically like you're going to open, you're going to get the crowd warmed up a little bit, and then you kind of have to constantly be keeping them entertained in some way. And that was where I was like, I should go back and do this. I still hadn't fully said that's what I was going to do, but when I came back to Austin, I was, I let myself settle for a little while, and I was like, I'm gonna go do comedy, and that's where I am now.
Yeah. So what was your first Austin stage performance?
I started out doing improv.
Okay.
So my first...
So you still didn't go do an open mic.
I didn't. That's
keep putting that off.
That's the call out we needed. That's the who do you think you are?
It's this is like perpetual tease. Well, I didn't do it because, I had to do 8 Bringer, it was a Bringer show, it was midnight. And then, you're here in Austin, your friends didn't push you. And then you come back to Austin and you're still not doing an open mic.
Still not doing it. No, it still took me a solid, this is now I'm having a very serious examination of who I am as a person, because I came back to Austin in 2012 and I did not do an open mic, like stand-up comedy, until 2014.
Wow.
So it was like a year and a half, because I was getting settled and all this other bullshit. But at the end of the day, yeah, it took me a while. It took me a while to just go and do it. And I think improv helped, because I was just like, I can do this.
Yeah. You do get a pass for taking that step forward, and improv is really good for just getting comfortable on a stage. For
sure. And that being said, I still tell people who come and take improv, if I'm teaching them and they say, oh, well, I really want to do stand-up, I'm like, get it done. Don't be like me. Get it done. Because whatever, it'll be good, it'll be bad, whatever, but you have to go do it. Mm-hmm. There's no point where you're going to eliminate the risk of you failing.
Yeah.
Or where you're going to meet some non-existent standard for how comfortable you are. You just have to go do it. And you're better off, of course, doing it where the stakes are low, because I always see people who pick really like strangely high stakes. Well, I mean, I just see, you see people sign up for the contest for funniest person in Austin every year, which, to be fair, kind of makes sense, because it's like, maybe if you don't want to dive deep into the rabbit hole of comedy in Austin, then you just see a Facebook ad for that, or you know, or whatever, or someone sends you an email that's like, hey, you should sign up for this, Dan, you're funny. And so you pay your $15 and go to the contest and realize in front of hundreds of people that you are in fact not funny. Yeah. But it's it took me a while, you know, and then finally I went and did it, you know, and it was at the New Movement. It was when we had our open mic on Thursdays, and it was fine, you know. It was one of those things where that took me 28 years. Not counting my one summer camp talent show, 28 years. And I remember, because I was dating somebody at the time, and this sums it up. I was dating somebody at the time who was not there when I did the show. And it was okay. Like, I got a laugh. So that I was like cloud nine. Yeah. I've made somebody laugh. I have satisfied, you know, my little Dennis Leary Mufasa in my head. And I texted this person who I was dating at the time, I just did an open mic, and it went okay. And this was like at 11:30 at night, and she just texted back, great. I was just like,
do you not realize I've been waiting 28 years?
Exactly. I should have given her the entire story, the 15 minutes that you've all just listened to. Yeah, it's but that sums it up. Certainly, if you're getting into if you're getting into entertainment, that's going to be all the conversations you have. You're going to be at, like, you know, you're at dinner at Thanksgiving, and you're like, oh yeah, well, you know, I just you know, I got cast in a web series pilot, and they're going to be like, oh, good, great, yeah. Does that mean anything, or? You know, well, it's like that conversation you have, like when you get into your first comedy festival, and, you know, like, I'm talking with my mother about that, and she's like, "Oh, that's great. Yeah. Like, are they going to fly you out there?" No. I mean, I'm going to pay for all that on my own. Oh, okay, great. Well, is it going to be like a really good show, big crowd? It's like, I don't know, but probably not, because I'm a nobody. Like, they're taking a chance on me. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm not headlining. And they're like, oh, okay, well, are they at least going to, like, pay you anything? And it's like, no. In fact, I paid them to even consider putting me in. It's just like, yeah, it's a nightmare. So knowing that if you still want to do it, then that's, like, a really good sign. So, yeah.
So the improv part continues to be a pretty big part of your performance life.
Yeah, for sure. Not as big as I'd like it to be honest. I mean, I teach, and that it's great to be able to have, you know, some money making part of your comedy life. Mm-hmm. And it's also, like, I think that gives me a lot of energy to see people, and like I said, 28 years took me a long time, and I would love to be more encouraging to people wherever they're at in their life, because it took me some weird set of circumstances. You know, sometimes I look back and I'm like, where could that one person have been in my life? Not to say that I should externalize, you know, like, I don't want to putting this off of myself, but like, where might that one person have been in my life who's like, you know what, Nathan, you're a funny, entertaining person. You should go out there and do it. Like, you might fail, but you should go out and do it. And maybe those people were there and I just wasn't listening to them. But I like being able to encourage people in that way and give them some guidance, and also just even for the people who are there just for fun, like, you know, help them have some fun with it. Because I think improv is great. But other than that, you know, it's kind of sporadic right now. You know, you go to a point especially in improv, where you start and it takes over your life for a little bit, and then you get to the point where, kind of like, because I'm like 4 years into it now, where, you know, you're not on 5 different teams, you're not spending every single day at the theater. It's more like, man, it'd be great if I had a weekly show or something, like, and some people who were at that same point with me, because there's so many different, you know, like let's say ages in improv, you know, because you have, like, young and excited, and then you have kind of like terrible twos, and then you have, like, you know, juvenile, adolescent, all that stuff. And I'm probably more in that adolescent area right now where it's like, yeah, I'll do a show every now and then. And like, it's improv, so it's lazy, which is great. Like, I just show up and do it. There's not a ton of production, but not as much as I'd like, despite the fact that, you know, I will definitely publicly say that it's like my favorite thing to do.
Yeah.
So
going back just a little bit, what was it about the new movement that got you in the door in the first place? Because even then, I mean, that was the boom in the Austin comedy scene was in full force.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, I would say it was Michael Folk, because he and I actually knew each other. We were friends of friends before I started doing comedy. Okay. And I remember when I first met him, because he was friends with people I knew from College Station, who were in bands, because he was in a band for a while. And then I remember meeting him at some point, and then when people were like, oh yeah, this guy does comedy, because people had always known I was interested in that. And then I was like, oh, cool. And we never really like connected too much, but then I saw a Facebook post from him that was like, hey, we need people to sign up for classes at the new movement. And I was like, I'm just gonna go do it, you know? Like, it's right there in front of me. This was at a point in my life where all I was doing was like going to work and going home, you know? So it was like I needed something different in my life.
Okay. All right.
But yeah, and since then, you know, I've had a great opportunity to like branch out, and you know, because I think again, Austin has such a fantastic comedy scene in every way, because there's literally, you know, 5 places that you can go and train, and there's all kinds of great experienced people that you can train with. So I've definitely you know, spent time at the other theaters as well.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got improv, we've got stand-up, and I know you've done film. Is
indeed, yeah,
sketch in there at all? Are you one of these? You're going to test the waters in everything?
I was in a very active sketch group for about a year, where we were writing and producing, and only with only 4 of us. It was definitely like it was a very hard-working group. We were writing, producing, and performing a show about once a month, and then towards the end of our lifetime, we were going and making videos every single week as well. I like sketch a lot. It is such a. It's the hardest. I'll put that out there. It's the hardest of them all.
Nobody would question that.
Yeah, because improv and stand up, you show up and you do your thing. Stand up, you know, you have to prepare. So that's like, I think, more in the middle. But at the same time, it's like, write a joke, go to an open mic, see if it works. If it doesn't, great, throw it out. If it does, keep doing it, polish it, whatever. You know, and you have that chance to constantly be getting the reps and seeing what happens. Yeah. And every single performance is fairly low stakes. With sketch, it's like, write it, rewrite it. That tends to be a collaborative process, and then you have to actually produce the show, which, you know, more and more I'm taking a shine to like production ideas for sketch, where it's like maybe we don't need, you know, 15 different costumes and 200 props.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll just all wear kind of like neutral toned outfits, and we'll let our characters do the talking, as opposed to like a fake beard. But yeah, I've dabbled in sketch. It challenges me because I think I am a lazier person than others. But I would love to do more, you know, and that's I think a thing that is going to help me. Like that kind of combines the acting and the acting and performing, and like the comedy brain of like, what is really funny about this, which I think you get the most in stand up, where you're like actually scientifically building a funny idea.
Yeah. So of the 3, keeping in mind what you just said,
that
laziness.
I'm a lazy person.
Yeah, keeping that in mind, of the 3, which do you just answer?
Yes.
Which one is your favorite?
Improv. Yeah, for sure. I love improv because it's free. I think, you know, I think it has the most potential, because I love stand up, and as an extension of stand up, things like storytelling, which can be like really transformative for people when you teach, because it's interesting because we all have stories, right? And then you sit down with somebody and help them like understand how to make their story relatable to people. And I think no matter what, I'm going to get in some hippie crystal shit here. Like, I think no matter what, when you connect with people, it does something to you. And what you do, like, and stand-up comedians, no matter how jaded they are, what they do that makes people really laugh and what makes them feel good and gives them energy, I think, is they say stuff that's, like, relatable. Mm-hmm. And when you say a thing like, when you reveal some embarrassing fact about yourself, or you put together, or you do, like, a setup that's like, hey, this is a universally relatable thing. People are like, that is. But here's an absurd idea as an extension of that. Or here's a weird thing about the way that I see that universal thing. And then, like, this whole room of people is like, oh, I can see it that way too. Or that's what I've been thinking this entire time. And I've never even put words on it. And in doing so, they laugh, and that creates this connection. And I think that's very transformative. And it's the same thing with storytelling. When you can teach people how to structure their story in such a way that it connects with people, and then it makes them feel that transformation. I think with improv veers a little bit more into the realm of like, let's do things. Let's give ourselves permission to do things, and then see if that funny happens. And I tell people this when I teach. It's going to happen. 99% of the time, it's going to happen. Like, I'd say 98% of the time it's going to happen. 98% of the time, you're going to find the funny in some way, because the funny is just going to happen. Because I think when you yes and over and over, you're going to hit some part that's like, that's weird, and then you're going to drill into that, and people are going to laugh because you're actually calling out the weird thing, which is something I think everyone wants to do every single day of their life, is like, that was weird, let's talk about it for a little bit. And then the other 1% of the time, it's going to be super bad to the point that this is just for you, like, soak in that awfulness for a little bit. Because it really is like a diamond, because most of the time you don't get true awfulness in improv. You might get some mediocrity in there, but it's so great and I tell people this all the time. I'm like, that was so bad, and all I wanted to do was see you enjoy it. Like, you knew it was bad, but instead of like enjoying it and being like, this is so bad. It's like one of those scenes where, like, some dude walks in and is like, make me a sandwich, and then everyone freezes up because they're like, this is terrible. And it's like, but what if we just bear hug that this guy is a heel? We hate him, and then see where it goes. Like, and then the other 1%, I think, is where, like, it's not funny, but it's still, like, really compelling. And that's, like, the 1% of improv that's capable of being dramatic. Because most improv is silly. Like, it's going to be silly if you just keep yes-anding each other. But then there's, like, this 1% where something, like, really... Like, I've had those moments in shows doing improv where the whole audience is silent because they're like, whoa, that... Like, yeah, I get it. You two are space monsters. But that's what depression looks like. And then, like, everyone's quiet. And then, somebody farts and everyone laughs again. Yeah. But there are those moments where, I do think there's this great transformative potential in improv. And it reminds me that, that the power of, like, agreeing with people, the power of really saying yes, because there's part of it just, like, going with the flow. And when I teach people, I'm like, improv is more than just going with the flow. It's like becoming part of the flow. Like, you aren't just going with it. You're yesing it. You're pushing it forward. Yeah. And I think there's something really interesting and engaging and transformative about that, because it reminds you that you matter. Like, when you go with the flow, it's almost like you're saying, I don't matter. I may as well just float in this stream. But if you say to yourself, I can actually be a productive member of this whole thing by saying yes and, like, pushing the scene forward, then it's like, I think it really helps people discover how much power they have and how funny and interesting they are. Because I truly believe that everybody can be funny. Everyone can be interesting. They just have to give themselves permission, which isn't that hard because you can just say yes and go with it. Because my mother's always like, I could never do improv because you're all so quick on your feet. And I'm like, I don't think that has... Yeah, there's a component to that, like being quick on your feet, that's great. But you don't have to be that to be good at improv. So I love improv the most because I just... it reminds me of the things that I'm capable of doing. It is incredibly easy to do from a production standpoint, and also it connects people. I love when I can get on stage with people I've never even met before and make stuff happen with them. And there's this like universal acceptance that whatever happened was okay, and and we were all happy with it. Which I still challenge myself when I go do improv that it should be good in some objective sense. Like people paid maybe $5 to see this, but like it should be good, like it should be delightful. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it needs to be like that needs to be easily digestible, or that needs to address the lowest common denominator or anything like that. But I still the opportunities that I've had, like with Out of Bounds, being able to get on stage with people I've literally never met before in my life. We did a show where it was the Mega Pigeon show, where we had a storyteller who was going to tell stories, and then we were going to do improv inspired by those stories. And our storyteller was Wendy Davis, and it was it was a huge packed house at Spider House, and it was sort of this like all-star cast with a lot of great Austin people, and then a bunch of other improvisers from the festival. And again, it was that thing of like, we're all improvisers. Yeah, just drop us on a stage, tell us to do improv, and we're going to go do it. And it was fun. We all had these moments where we were playing with people who literally we probably didn't even remember their name, but we just were going for it. So. That's my long-winded response to that question. I could have given you a one-word answer.
You could have.
But I went ahead and stretched it out to 8 minutes.
I almost feel like I got a glimpse of what it's like to take a class from you. Because I could imagine you saying some of those words to your students.
Yeah. Manic ravings. A lot of gesturing. A lot of pulling it out. Yeah. I try to, for those of you who might be interested in signing up for a class, I talk a lot less. I mean, I will wax philosophic for maybe like 5 minutes at points. I will get carried away, but that's something that I really work on trying not to do, because I realize that someone who's, taking their first ever improv class does not want to hear about the transformative potential of what they're doing. They want to play zip, zap, zop and get the hell out of there.
Yeah, so listeners, that 8 minutes, you got a special treat there.
Right. Mm-hmm. That's what happens if you ask me so much as one question after class. That's what you get.
So what does stand-up bring to you that exercises different muscles that you keep with it? Because, I mean, you just seem like an all-in improv person. I mean, if you've gotten to the point where you're teaching it, like it's...
For sure. I think stand-up, stand-up is easy to do in the sense that you can just go do it.
Yeah.
And whatever that means to you. Like, I would love to be a better joke writer. And anytime I've been like specifically challenged to write jokes, like for a show like Year in Review, or like, a show where they're just like, hey, you have to write setup punchline jokes.
Yeah.
It's like, it is an anxiety-inducing thing for me, because when I do go on stage, I want at least most of the things that come out of my mouth to be genuine reflections of who I am. Like, I'm not someone who wants to get up there and, go like, hey, what's up with airline food, or someone just go up there and be like, and make, which, no judgment, because there are people who are so smart and funny who can just say like, I saw a thing on the news that really meant nothing to me, but here's like 5 funny things I came up with about that thing I saw on the news. And that's great. I mean, I think all the great comics definitely like tie it back to who they really are, because I think no matter what, if you're going to delight people, I think there's some element of connection that has to be there. But stand-up is easy in the sense that you can go do that. You can go, go work on an idea that you think is funny. Is it funny? Yes, no. You get an immediate response from that, and then you can, keep doing the thing. So it's not terribly demanding in that sense. And also, it is a challenge. It's a challenge, like, you don't... like it still needs to be crisp. Like it challenges your execution, your idea of like how efficiently funny can I make an idea that's still real. So selfishly speaking, it's like you get to be a star. You get to be up there. You get to play dress up.
The truth comes out, everybody. Here we go.
You get to pick out a show outfit. I'll put that out there in the public. Like if I have a big show coming up, I am laying clothes out on the bed. That's how I'm doing it.
Are you at? This is not a comic I've interviewed yet, but he's on my radar. Are you Taylor doubting this?
Me and Taylor talk about the outfits, and we come from a completely different place as far as the show outfit goes. Like he's a much more daring, more bold statement color guy, and I'm more of like clean cut earth tones. Taylor has told me that specifically that I wear a lot of earth tones. But yeah, and that's definitely in there somewhere. Because here's the thing: I love improv, and I tell this to my students too. I love improv, but at the end of the day, you are a bunch of people on stage playing pretend. Like it is objectively stupid.
Yeah,
it's wonderful. It transforms you. It empowers you. And I think and at the highest level, like it makes people laugh in a way that they never have before because they're literally like, whoa, that just happened. And like I think people, even if they can't put words on it, something that they're allowing themselves to believe a little bit more when they watch improv is that no matter what, it all kind of works out in the end. Which is great. That's a really inspiring message to deliver. And it doesn't necessarily, like, stereotypically sometimes stand-up comedy comes from that place of like, you can go to an open mic and you can watch like 20 dudes talk about how much they hate themselves. You can watch 20 guys talk, try to figure out where to put their finger on the hot button issue. Try to put their hot takes in there, or just say terrible things for the purpose of being edgy. And you don't get as much of that in improv. Improv's not perfect, but I love the idea of like, one way that I've heard it put is that even at the worst improv show you've ever seen, those people are having fun, But that being said, there's bad versions of every comedy, every type of comedy. And with improv, like as fun as it is, you don't get to be the star. Like no one, every now and then you might have someone come up to you after a show and be like, I liked you the most.
Yeah.
And the right response to that is, well, everyone else was doing great too. You got to give it up to the team.
And you just hate doing that, don't you?
Oh, it boils my blood. But then, like, after a stand-up show, it's like, that was all for me. Like, you can just walk away being like, I did that.
Yeah. Okay, so you started doing stand-up in 2014. Is that right? And you dropped a bombshell. One of my facts is incorrect, but you did you start Hops and Grain?
I did.
Okay.
I started that show in 2014.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So that's like, how did... You just wanted to take the bull by the horns.
You could put it that way. And
you wanted to drink. I
did. It was one of those things where I probably have a little bit more. I'm a responsible guy. I'm an email sender. I'm a spreadsheet guy. And so immediately, like starting doing comedy. I was like, well, I could probably run a show if I felt like it. And selfishly, it was also like, if I run a show, then I'm finally on a show.
Yeah, you can be the star.
Right. Well, and that's like lesson number one that I learned as a host is like, you are not the star. Nobody, like, yeah, someone might come up, like people might be like, oh yeah, that's the guy who runs the whole thing. Good on him. But the idea is, as a host, as someone running the show, it shouldn't be about you. It should be about your performers. It should be about the venue, which you're in a relationship with. You're trying to help them sell drinks, and get more people in the door. But I was definitely misguided, and I remember a Facebook status. This was like a year and a half into me hosting Hops and Grain, because I did a lot of dumb stuff when I started hosting that show. I knew people at Hops and Grain, so immediately when they opened up their new tap room space, it was this big space. You could fit a ton of people in there, and I was like, and the people I knew there, I was like, how would you feel about having a comedy show here? And they were like, do you want to put it on? That's awesome. So I put it on. And it was bad. It was bad, and thankfully I had the right people to give me advice, and I was able to learn the lessons I needed to learn. So it got a little bit better over time. It was a monthly show at the time, and yeah, it picked up some steam, and it's good. And I'm happy to hand it off. I'm happy that it's going to continue being a fun show. We didn't have it weekly on Thursdays for a long time, and I think we still have a few that are floating out there that are great Thursday shows, but the Hops and Grain show is the one where it's like every single Thursday I can go to a spot if I'm trying to get ready for a weekend somewhere, if I'm trying to get ready for a festival, if somebody's in town. So I'm glad I can be there to serve that purpose. Yeah. I remember a Facebook status from, LaShonda Lester, who unfortunately is no longer with us, but she called out, the only way that the queen can, she called out. Because, I'll be honest, you look around, again, I made this mistake. I know that. I sometimes maybe I wish that somebody, and I'm sure I wouldn't have taken it well, but it would have been totally appropriate for them to say, to be like, hey, Nathan, maybe you want to be like a good comedian before you start hosting a show. Because I wasn't. Maybe I had a joke. But at the time, it's like, I hadn't gone and done the work, and maybe I'm still not doing the work. I don't know, but yeah, because sometimes I've gone and watched a few comedy showcases where it's like, okay, there's some work to be done here, as far as it still gets me sometimes when you show up, when you see a comedy show and you can tell the venue isn't with the show, the venue's whatever, people are doing comedy over there. Or you go to a comedy show and the host, really doesn't know what they're doing, or the equipment's not set up right, or all these different things. And another big thing too with running a show is booking a show. You can't just, you have to be someone who's treating it like a professional. I definitely reached out to a lot of people who I'd never met before in person and was like, I run a show. Would you like to come do it? Here's the, here's the rundown, etc. But to make sure that it was a show where you could see a few, heavy hitters, you could see some people coming up. That's the point of a showcase, in my opinion. But, you see people who start shows, and LaShonda just called it out and was like, I see way too many people starting up their own damn show, booking, booking embarrassing lineups, which are obviously just their friends. And then of course, these were people also who were reaching out to LaShonda, and being like, hey, LaShonda, do you want to come do my show? Because that's the crazy thing is you can start a show and then reach out to whoever you want and be like, hey, somebody who gets paid to do comedy regularly, or hey, somebody who's been practicing this craft for 10 years. Do you want to come do my show in a basement? I can't pay you anything. And also the other 5 people on the lineup have been doing this for a week. So she called it out. And I remember reading that and I was like, at this point it was a year and a half in and I think I had learned a lot of my lessons, but I was still damn, that, if I had read that after the first show that I did, I might've been I need to walk away from it for a second. But I did start that show very early, 2014, and soldiered through because it was slow to start, and it was learning how to promote a show and learning how to book a show the right way, and then even learning how to host a show the right way. And I'm kind of glad it was monthly to start because that gave me enough time to forget how bad I was between every single show. And then finally, just this year, we went in 2017, which was last year, I guess technically. We went weekly with it, and so that was another big learning experience of running a show every single week and making sure that it happens and keeping the lights on, so to speak. But I'm glad that it's still around. I'm glad that it's a show that now when people go and do their first open mic and are sort of getting the lay of the land, that someone might be like, yeah, here are some shows that you're working your way up to, whether it's Buzzmill or In the Treehouse, or all the different shows around town. People might mention Gutbusters at Hops and Grain. Yeah.
I will admit, weeknights are tough for me to get out, but I did finally get to go out to see a show. Must have been in the summertime, and I was super impressed. It was a great lineup. I think it was Kelsey Kane, who's now up in New York, was in town, and I'll move mountains just to go to watch her do her magic. So it was, I was like, wow, this is like a packed venue and well run and great acts on it. So I was impressed.
Yeah, and it's good. I think it's
3 years in you.
Sure. Yeah. And I think that's always the test is like, if you're not going to listen to what the universe is telling you, like the universe told me a lot of things, whether it's, hey, I think the most important thing, and the thing I still tell people when they're starting, when they're learning how to host a show is like, it is not about you.
Yeah.
Like as a host, and this I think is in stand up, especially when you go and you get, when you go and get booked to work a club or whatever, it's like no one's there to see you, right? Like no one. And I used to even tell people, like, because I would tell people, I run a comedy show on Thursday. They're like, oh, I have to come. And I'm like, well, if you're coming to see me, don't come to this show.
Yeah.
Like, if you want to see, Kelsey Kane, come to this show. She's an act on this show. I'm not an act on this show. I'm the host. And so, it's still a great service that I love to do. If I'm doing a comedy festival and they ask me if I want to host a show, I'm like, absolutely. I love to give it up to the other acts, and I love to run a good show that people enjoy.
Yeah.
But yeah, the universe told me a lot of stuff because it was pretty bad for a while.
Well, I can say this as a fellow mathematician that, one of our typical traits is we know what the answer is. It's in the back of the book, and it's all trial by error sometimes to just
for sure
refine, tweak, change this so that we ultimately get to that right answer. So we're kind of genetically coded to always be improving and making sure we get to the right spot at the end. So
for sure.
So the bombshell that you dropped is that you last week was your final hosting. My final,
my send off. Everyone came, all my loved ones. That is not the case. I mean, and again, it's not about me. It was just one of those things where it was like any other show. I mean, I had a great lineup, all locals, which was really nice. It's nice to close on a show like that. And all people who I really admire, Karina Magyar and Ariel Norman, Devin Walker, Robert Segovia, Melody Shiflett, Joe Tuller, just people who I really appreciate. I'm glad I could drop all of those names on you. Because I knew if I missed one, I was going to hear about it. But it was a good lineup, and it was just it was a fun show. And honestly, like the thing that I said at the end of that show was just, if I can say one poignant thing on my way out the door, it's like, one, you should support Hops and Grain because it's a fantastic business. They make good beer and they are good people. And then two, like it still boggles my mind the number of conversations that I have where I'll mention comedy in Austin and people are like, oh, where can I catch a show? And I'm like, throw a rock. Like, you'll hit a comedy show.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, this is a comedy city, and people who come here from, whether it's from, huge markets like New York, LA, Chicago, they give that up. And then, people who come here from, like, similar-sized markets, whether it's, like, Asheville or Denver, people come from those markets, and they're like, this is where it's at. And I wish people would just... Like, if someone lives in Austin, Texas, and their friend comes in from Dallas, whatever, and is like, what should we do tonight? They should be like, we should go see a comedy show. Because you're going to go to the Buzz Mill, or you're going to go to Hops and Grain, or wherever, and you're going to see, for no money at all, people who are really good.
Yeah.
And it's, but yet I did hand the show off, and I think change is good. It'd been a long time, 3.5 years, and I think, I read my horoscope for the year, and this is supposed to be like a really transformational year for me as a Leo. And so I do think I'm going to try and do some things differently. I think I'm the type of person, I really respect people who can just soldier on. The example that comes to my mind is like the Sure Thing guys. Every week for 5 years, and like Maggie May when she was running the open mic at Cold Town, every week for years and years, you know? And I think for some people that's, and even for myself, like 80% of the work is just showing up. You know, you give yourself that opportunity to learn something about yourself and to just keep doing the work, because eventually you're going to have a light bulb moment of some sort. But I think too, for me, like I'm just dumb enough that I've got to shake it up every now and then. Like I gotta.
3 years feels right for sure when it comes to comedy role that you've had. And you know, I mean, it hasn't fully sunk in yet, but I think in the next few months, as this change kind of solidifies in my life, it's like, what is that going to tell me to do next? You know, I don't do enough open mics. I should be going out there and doing more open mics, you know? And now that I have a night of my week that is not spoken for, I can go do that, you know? I kind of feel like part of this like puts it back on me to kind of be a nobody again. Like, not a dude who runs a show, but a dude who maybe the next time I'm getting introduced, on stage or whatever, it's not about me running a show. It's about me being really funny, you know, or it's about, you know, and so it's like giving myself that opportunity for that to happen. Very cool. It's actually interesting that this is my official first interview of 2018, and you're an embodiment of, okay, we've got a new year, new set of circumstances, make something of it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to turn this whole crystal, Zen philosophy stuff back on you now.
I'm glad. Yeah, well, believe me, I will take it. I'm a self-help junkie. I read all those books. I believe it all. And I think for me, like, as I get to know myself better, because and this is like such a self-important, shitty thing to say, I'm a complicated person. Let that settle in, okay? A fist hasn't hit my face yet, so I'm a complicated person. I still feel like I'm getting to know myself sometimes, and I think like one of the things that I've finally accepted that's okay about me, because I've seen so many other successful, great people who I admire who don't need this, and so there's that element of comparison and saying like, well, why can't I be like them? But it is like if I'm knowing myself and like understanding what I need, like I need to be inspired. I need to be shaken up. I need to, to have these moments where, like, I need to put myself in those situations where it's like, it is a new year. Yeah. I'm going to vision board. I'm going to write down, 10 goals, whatever. And it needs to be different. And sometimes, like, having the regular stuff in there, the routine helps. But sometimes, too, like, you get sort of like, it's almost like plaque buildup. You get, like, routine buildup.
Yep.
Where,
Absolutely.
You've built up X number of things that you do every single week or every single day, to the point that you don't have enough time to be bored. And you don't have enough time to get inspired. And then you look at yourself and you're like, well, who am I? Like, I haven't changed. I haven't had, like... And that being said, no matter what, like, I've had great transformative moments in the past few years. But, also just giving myself more time to do other stuff, Yeah. I think running a stand-up show is great, and, like, I would hope that I will continue to do things such that people will not begrudgingly call me a stand-up comedian. Unbegrudgingly. They'll be like, he's a stand-up? But I think... Yeah, I mean, for a while there, I think I was kind of holding on to the show as this is what makes me relevant. But, it's like, well, maybe I just need to go out there and be, like, undeniably funny. I've been chasing that word. I'm probably going to chase that word for the rest of my life, for the rest of my career. Like, being undeniably funny to the point that, it doesn't matter if you haven't done a show in a week. It doesn't matter if you took a week off or 2 weeks off. It doesn't matter if you're not running a show. People could still be like, oh, yeah, Nathan, he's funny. Like... I could, they might reach out to me, whatever, on Facebook and be like, hey, because I've known people who've taken time off, and I'm like, I'll still reach out to them because I'm like, I know you're funny. I know, even if you're taking time off, that if you want to come to a show, that you can muster up 8 to 10 minutes of you being funny. And that's, I'll keep chasing that.
Cool. Well, we're going to wind things down, and we haven't talked really at all about, except as you were talking to your mom about festivals.
Right.
But you've done festivals, and you've done FPIA as well. We know that the future is a little bit of a open slate right now.
It is. My calendar is no. It's not. Book me. I have got. Actually, I've got kind of a. I've already got a busy year. Not a ton of comedy stuff on the calendar. You know, I mean, I'm trying to think. So the big thing that's like in my mind, I'm looking at it because I've got 2 films that I'm shooting in January, February, and then it kind of immediately that film wraps in February, and then I'm immediately going into like April, May. There's another film that I'm shooting. So that's going to take up a lot of my time, and maybe I'll get to the point where I'm like, I don't like doing this. I don't know. But
are you in front or behind the camera?
In front of the camera.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's that to keep me busy, and you know, I'm sure, you know, the other things will roll around. I definitely want to keep doing shows, and then of course, you know, the contest is going to come through, and you know, there's other things coming up. You know, Out of Bounds as always. I'm doing the Burbank Comedy Festival this year, which is out in none other than Burbank, California. Yeah. And I'm sure, you know, other things will roll in. But yeah, I would hope that, I think 2018, because that is in fact the year that it is right now, I would hope that 2018 like can be a year that when I get to the end of it, I can look back and be like, wow, I did a lot, and I challenged myself to do a lot more. So I'm really setting myself up for some immense disappointment.
No. You're going to be immensely pleased, because as of this point in time, you could absolutely not predict all the cool things that are coming your way.
And I certainly, I want to give myself that hope, and that's like a daily affirmation type thing. I need to just say, like, continue to be hopeful and optimistic, and do things on a daily basis that you know are supportive to yourself, and that you know are supportive to others, and you know, have those regular check-ins where you're like, am I still like on the right vector towards what I want to be? Yeah. And at the same time, it's like there's a lot that's out of your control. You can't control anybody else's perception of you. Right. And some of the things that I've set up to this point where it's like, I want people to perceive me as great. And that word undeniable that floats out there is like, it is rooted in that idea that nobody's perception of you is conditional. It's like and I mean, there are plenty of examples of that. You know, I think of people like Vanessa Gonzalez or like Andrew Dismukes, who are just undeniably funny, like undeniably talented. They are meteors. We could not stand in their way. And that's one type of person. You have to like find whatever it is, whatever platform you're going to stand on, whatever voice you're going to use to put yourself in that position. And it takes time, you know, and then you have to like forgive yourself and support yourself and be kind to others, and, you know, put some crystals in your pockets and all the good stuff.
This is the most self-help episode of Comedy Wham ever, I think.
Well, I'm glad I'll email you a bibliography that you can put along with this.
Oh yeah, we'll do show notes here, the recommended books. Well, I like to wrap up these episodes by asking one word to describe your future.
I'm gonna let that meow stand in. Upward, you know, onward and upward. I say that all the time. I'm just like, you gotta, you know, you have to keep moving forward. That was like an old Walt Disney thing. It was just like, don't let your past hold you back. Don't even let your present hold you back. Like, keep moving forward. Keep being kind and supportive. Keep putting good energy out in the world. And like, and it's not, and like, it's not that success will happen to you, because success is a dumb thing that you get from, you know, TV and the internet and magazines. Like, success is a word, and success is a thing that really, to be honest, is like mostly fabricated to get you to buy stuff. I'm giving it to you, the man. Illuminati, if you weren't listening to Comedy Wham before, you are turned. Now. But yeah, and so like I hate it when people are like, I don't hate it, but it's like it can be kind of confusing when people say if you're a good person and you continue moving forward, that success will happen to you, because maybe it doesn't, like whatever textbook success is. But I think if you keep moving forward, then and allowing yourself to be okay with whatever happens, then you make it. That's all we can do. You survive, and hopefully you keep the whole thing working, because it takes every single one of us. But upward. We're going to keep going upward.
I dig it. Well, that is a wrap on Comedy Wham Presents Nathan Ehrmann. Tell us where we can find you on social media, where we can find out what you're up to.
Where you can find out the hole that I've sunk into. So you can certainly follow me on Twitter or Instagram at JustMadeByNate. Those will be my ramblings, or my picture, my illustrated ramblings. And my website, nathanehrmann.co. There's really not much there to speak of, a picture or two. Other than that, follow me on social media. That's where you can get all the big announcements. There is a film that I shot last year that is releasing in July of this year that was made here in Austin, has some great Austin faces in it, made by an Austin production studio called Maybe Shower, that I think you will really enjoy. It is a comedy, so you will laugh. And I don't know when this is going to be released, but I am headlining, so upward. I am headlining in the Treehouse Friday, January 19th at Austin Java down on Barton Springs. Always a fun show. Chris Castles runs a great show out there. And so that'll be about 8 p.m.-ish, on January 19th. So come check it out. Otherwise, keep an eye open, keep being good, do your thing.
Very nice. We hope you've enjoyed learning about how Nathan got to be the comedic genius that you heard today, just as much as I have. Be sure to visit ComedyWham.com, give us a follow on Twitter and Instagram at ComedyWham, and like our Facebook page. You can listen to past interviews on Stitcher, Google Play, and iTunes, and review us while you're at it. This has been Comedy Wham Presents Nathan Ehrmann. I'm Valerie, and that's been funny. Thank you, Nathan.
Thank you.